Hello, and welcome to Raph's Hall of Fame, the show where each episode we have a guest who tries to convince me that their underrated favorites should be in my Hall of Fame. Today, we have Danielle Radford as our guest. Hello.
Hello. Hi. I'm so happy to be here. I really, I can't wait to defend the honor of the person I will be presenting.
Okay, now, today, we're going to be talking about a sport that we have not tackled yet, which is wrestling. And the thing about wrestling is that no matter every type of person is a wrestling fan, if that makes sense. Like, not every individual is a wrestling fan, obviously, but it spans all types of people that you wouldn't even expect. It's so fascinating on so many different levels.
Wrestling is the best thing in the entire world. Like, I mean, there's no other way to put it. Like, wrestling is like these stories that are told over this long period of time, and it combines everything great about storytelling.
Yes.
It's rivalries, betrayals, two people locked in like blood feuds.
So much drama.
Sometimes someone gets a fluorescent light put on the head, and that's weird. But
it's Game of Thrones.
It's Game of Thrones, but in a ring in front of a bunch of people. It's essentially theater in the round, right? Because you've got the ring, and then you have all of the people around it, and everyone's jeering. I'm not saying it's like Shakespeare. I'm just saying that, like, I feel like we take Shakespeare really seriously because they spoke a different kind of English than we do now.
I agree.
But if Shakespeare was alive now, I will go on record as saying he would have written for wrestling, much like a Freddie Prinze Jr. has.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll never know.
Yeah. Don't at me.
Real quick, if you're watching this on the CH2 channel, what are you doing? This has been on Dropout for some time.
You could have been listening to me slander William Shakespeare for months.
Allegedly slandered. We allegedly slandered. Just so legal doesn't get on our back. That's fantastic. Do you have anything to plug before we get too deep into it? You're very funny on Twitter. I'm pretty sure we showed your Twitter handle already, but very funny on Twitter. I think that's just your name, right?
Yeah, it's just Danielle Radford.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter. I do have a wrestling podcast called Tights and Fights. It's on the Max Fun Network. It comes out usually on Thursdays. It's me, actor, voiceover guy Hal Lublin, Open Mike Eagle, the rapper, is sometimes on there when he's not, being famous or whatever. Fine, I get it. And also British rom-com book writer Lindsay Kelk, and it's us, and we talk about this fun, wonderful, terrible, awful, silly, amazing sport that we love.
Fantastic. Quick question: does Lindsay Kelk know anything about erotic fiction?
I mean, everyone does. She's a person on the earth.
We got a show for them. Okay, that'll be another. That's cross promotion. That's what that's called. That's cross promotion.
Is there a Hall of Fame for erotic fiction? Because I can promise you a Kelk if that's the
case. We'll talk. Okay, but today you're here to talk about a specific wrestler.
Yes.
And who is Eddie Guerrero.
Yes. So,
I'll admit I know nothing of Eddie Guerrero.
And that is my problem. Because I was talking to people about doing the show, and they were like, wrestling fans. And so for wrestling fans, he is such a legend in the sport that they thought that he was maybe too big to be on a show like this where I have to convince someone. And I said, no, the average human,
I'm very average,
does not know who Eddie Guerrero is. People know Stone Cold.
Yes, I love Stone Cold. As soon as if I hear Breaking Glass to this day, I know. It's the rattlesnake.
By God, right? Like, there are things that you know. Obviously, everyone knows Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who apparently is going by DJ now. Okay, whatever.
That could get confusing.
That's what he's doing on his new show. I don't get it, but it's fine. You do you, Deej. And, people know Hulk Hogan. There are Randy Savage, the Ultimate Warrior. There are certain touchstones that people understand. Even some of the women who are on Totes Steves and Totes Bells. Total Divas and Total Bellas.
Okay.
But the average person does not know who an Eddie Guerrero is. And that was my argument, was that if someone brings up Stone Cold to me when they find out I like wrestling, I'm like, oh yeah, you're a human who knows what things are. He's even referenced on The Good Place. If someone brings up Eddie Guerrero, we got a stew going.
Right.
Like, I know I can have a conversation with you about wrestling.
All right. So what is it? What is his thing? Like he was an older gentleman. No?
Well, they're all, I mean, everyone ages.
That's true. Damn, you're right.
we are none of we're not all on this mortal coil forever. It turns out I have notes because Eddie is too important for me to wing it.
Yeah, let's get to it.
And so Eddie Guerrero, so he comes from a legendary wrestling family. The Guerreros are to wrestling as some families are to crime, as some families are to politics, as some families are to Walmarts. Like that.
Those
is
are all
what
criminals. Those were all,
allegedly. But so that is what the Guerreros do. They become wrestlers. So he grew up in El Paso, Texas, was a wrestler, was a collegiate wrestler, and then he went to Mexico and began wrestling. And when he originally wrestled in Mexico, he was a masked wrestler. Yeah. And there is a long tradition about masked wrestlers. I could talk about like for 10 hours. But a wrestler in Mexico, your mask is like your face, right? And so it's a very huge deal to be unmasked, to not wear the mask, which he wound up having to do when he switched companies, even though his character was extremely popular. And so he wound up going over to AAA, which is a company
that helps you with cars.
Is a company that helps you with cars unless you are in Mexico, in which case they can only help you with drop kicks. That's all.
I like this.
No cars, just drop kicks. But so he wrestled there for a while as a lucha libre. And then he did a stint in New Japan, which New Japan is they've been around forever. They have been gaining popularity in the States more recently because there have been more people that have come over. What's fascinating about New Japan is they are also very, or they have become, and they were becoming, especially at that time, very influenced by lucha libres and by the Mexican style of wrestling. And in fact, a lot of what you're seeing now that has become popular on the indie circuit is this mixture of Mexican wrestling by way of Japan, if that makes sense. That is very influential on what's happening on wrestling right now. And so one of the people who was a part of that, who helped make that possible was Eddie Guerrero and Eddie Guerrero's style. He was an amazing technical wrestler as well as being amazing on the mic. Because when you think of people, and Lord knows, we all love DJ. We all love Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. We can be okay with saying that the elbow drop is real stupid.
Yeah.
But the reason we buy it is because it's The Rock. Yeah. It's The Rock. It's that personality. It's what he puts into it.
Right.
It's his mic skills.
Yeah, it's the people's elbow.
It's the people's elbow.
My elbow.
It's the communist elbow. And so it's the socialism elbow.
The socialist elbow.
But so for, with an Eddie Guerrero, he is someone who had both. It's like, you look at The Ultimate Warrior. We all know what he did. He ran down to the ring and he shook the ropes, and that was all the energy he had, so he put none of it into the match. Whereas with an Eddie Guerrero, he could both nail the technical aspects of wrestling, making it look good, being careful not to hurt your partner, being able to do stunts but knowing when to not do things, and being able to communicate in the ring. So I know that for a lot of people, and this is something if you're not very introduced and you don't know a lot about wrestling, you might not know, a lot of people are like, well, it's choreographed, it's whatever. It's choreographed in the same way that if you take two professional dancers and you just have them like dancing casually in the club, they can work off of each other and do things, but usually it's not choreographed to begin with. What wrestlers are doing, and almost anytime you see someone in like a hold, sometimes they're resting, so it's things like rest holds.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're communicating to each other and they're saying like, okay, Irish rip off the rope, I'm, bulldog. They're telling each other what move is going to come next, and then they do it.
Right.
That is also something that the referees are used for, and the referees also have earpieces, and so they can communicate.
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
So they are in communication with the people in the back.
Oh,
in what is called so there's there's production trucks, but there's also kind of a small production team in what is called the gorilla position, because Gorilla Monsoon, who was a wrestler who then became a booker, and the booker is the person who you call them, you give them the book, they have the pen. They're the person who decides who wins and who loses matches and who puts the matches together. That's where P would always be. And so that's where this table of people, that's where your Vince McMahons are. That's where, whoever your Triple H's are now, whoever's running the show. And so they're communicating in that earpiece to the wrestlers that are in the ring.
Right. They're like producers.
Yeah, they're producers, essentially, but with different names because everything in wrestling has to have weird carny talk and it can't just be names that we know.
Yeah.
And so that's also, the ref is also communicating to them when they are in those holds or going down. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It does kind of break the magic for it.
Right.
But so that is what's so amazing about a wrestler like an Eddie Guerrero is that he can be so technically proficient and able to do it while essentially you learn how to do these things, but you're telling each other stuff on the fly. He was really big for, so his gimmick, he is a heel. And so a face is like a baby face. And that is what they call good guys.
Right. Like your DJs.
Sometimes when he first started, he was a heel. First he was a mega baby face and he had that weird pineapple hair and everyone hated him. And then he joined the Nation of Domination, which was essentially like the Nation of Islam.
I do not remember that. I would remember that.
Look it up.
I do not remember that.
Yeah, it was very like Black Power. We are the Nation of Domination.
Wow.
And he was in charge of that for a while.
I don't remember him being a part of that.
You'll have to look it up because that was what propelled his heel persona. So then he became the people's, the corporate, that's when he became that version of The Rock. And so a heel is your bad guy. They are the person that you were supposed to jeer. The thing with an Eddie Guerrero is he's so charming as a heel that he's able to take those same traits that would normally make someone a bad guy, a cheater, a liar, a stealer. And he turned that into his gimmick, and people loved him no matter what. He literally had a theme song that said, I lie, I cheat, I steal.
Whoa.
Yeah. Because that would be some of his best things were, and I loved this, when he was fighting with someone, when the ref had maybe their back turned or they were distracted, he would throw, because a lot of times in that situation, what the heel would do is they would take an object, a chair, something else, and they would beat the other player with it, throw it away before the referee can see it, and then go for the cover.
Yeah.
Eddie Guerrero would take the object, throw it at the other player who would catch it instinctively and then lay down and play dead and act as though the player had just hit him.
Right. Oh my God, this is deceptive.
Yeah.
So he's got one mark in the deceptive column. That's a pro column in this Hall of Fame.
Yeah, like and that was one of his major talents, was finding new ways to be a heel, because the thing about being a heel in wrestling is that it can be really, really hard, but if you're good at it, people will love you no matter what. Yeah. Because you can be a babyface and be what they call like a white meat babyface, like a John Cena or something, where you're very, or a Hulk Hogan before the stuff. Where the thing, the N-word, that's not an allegedly, that's on tape. So that for sure happened. So you can be that kind of baby face that's very much like, well, kids, you can be like John Cena and be like, never give up, buy my towel. Or you can be a Hulk Hogan, you say your prayers and take your vitamins and drink water and don't let your daughter marry an N-word. And sometimes those can be really loved, and sometimes it gets a little bit grating for the audience unless you're a child, which is usually what their demographic is, but they do make more money because being a babyface almost always makes you more money. But Eddie is one of those heels or one of those performers where it doesn't matter if he is a good guy or a bad guy, you love him. He transcends the tropes because WWE sets it up, and wrestling in general sets it up where you're supposed to cheer for the babyface and boo for the heel.
Yes.
But
very black and white.
Yeah, very black and white. Do this thing, do this thing. He was one where it didn't matter. They were going to cheer him, or they were going to...
He's an anti-hero.
He's an anti-hero. And those same qualities he would sometimes, he would use for that benefit. Yeah. And so after he was done with, New Japan, he went to WCW, where that's really where the legend of Eddie Guerrero started to grow. And he did ultimately wind up winning some championships there, but it was almost everyone would agree that he was not given his props. And he did ECW first and then WCW, not given his props.
So this is like the 80s, early 90s?
This is right around the Attitude-ish era.
Okay.
Is where this is happening.
Okay, yeah.
Just to kind of put that into perspective. And so at that moment in WCW, what you have is you have the New World Order. You have all of these different kinds of world orders, and basically everything becomes a New World Order versus or whatever. And essentially what it is that WCW, when they were trying to make their comeback, they brought back these old guys like they brought back these old guys like, your Randy Savages, your Hulk Hogans, and these men essentially held down everyone else, even though they were well into the twilight of their careers. And they made it harder for younger, scrappier people who arguably were more talented. Even, if you loved Hulk Hogan, you can't deny that his work rate, which is what you call it, like literally the amount of moves and the amount of physical exertion someone can pull off in the ring, his work rate sucked.
Okay.
It was not good.
Right.
He's not a good wrestler. He was a charming human, and that is why people liked him.
A dad that can only dab.
Yeah,
if we're comparing it to dancing.
Yeah, he can only dab. He can't drop it low.
Yeah, right.
If he drops it low, he's like my mom. I love her. One Thanksgiving, she tried to drop it low, almost ended up in the fireplace. It was a disaster.
Oh my God. You have a fireplace?
That's what that military pension will get y'all, son.
Hell yeah.
Join the army.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the PTSD.
Yeah.
Your kids will have a fireplace.
Or just the actual fact that you're signing your life away.
Yeah.
Can't they put you back in the military at any point, basically?
They can try to take my dad now. Good luck. Good luck, sirs.
I also just want to point out real quick. So we've never done wrestling before on this show, and we have like sports themed stuff up here. And then for this one, we have a wrestling robe.
That's a good. You know what? That kind of looks like. No, I'm not gonna get it. There's so much wrestling too. I could think of exactly whose robe that looks like, but I'm not gonna get. There's I might have to look it up because no one really cared about this dude. So if you remember the wrestler Sable.
No.
Sable's whole thing was like, I'm sexy and I'm with a guy who, like, his gimmick is kind of a boxer, and her husband wore a robe that looked very much like that. So that might have been an on-purpose thing.
Hell yeah. Oh, no, it is on purpose.
Yeah,
It's very strategically placed.
Yeah. And also robes are a huge part of wrestling. Very decorative. Ric Flair used to spend $10,000 on his robes, and that was in 1970s money.
Jesus Christ.
That's why he ain't got none now. And so, allegedly. And so, so it was pretty widely known that they weren't. The company was holding back these younger, promising talents like him,
right.
A Dean Malenko, a Perry Saturn, Chris Benoit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, from now on, I guess known as Redacted. I don't know what else to Chris Benoit.
I guess it's very sad.
Very sad, very tragic. Unfortunately, his story and Eddie's story, you can't really pry them apart. Unfortunately, so a lot of things happen. Eventually, they moved to WWE right as WCW is about to nosedive. And so then Eddie goes to WWE. He starts doing this great work. But again, it feels like he's not being given his due for someone who is as incredibly charismatic, who can do every part of wrestling, who is innovating wrestling, doing moves that, people on American television at that point are not seeing again. Now, it's one of those cases where, say you tell someone, George Carlin's a genius.
Yes.
And they go back and they listen and they're like, I don't get it. And it's like, well, yeah, because what he did back then was innovative.
Yeah.
But then everyone stole it and everyone learned from it. So if you look back now, it looks old fashioned, like you don't understand. That was a lot of what Eddie was doing. What Eddie was doing is what is popular now. But he was doing it 20 years ago.
Right. Unbelievable. So did he ever get a chance? Like, did he ever get a shot at winning a title or anything?
He did. So he's won some titles. Depending on the company, every company has myriad different titles. There's, in ECW, he won the TV championship. I believe he did win the WCW. He did win the heavyweight championship once in WCW, but the weird thing about titles is that you would think that those belts would mean that you're in the main event all the time and you're automatically considered to be a main eventer.
Yeah.
That is not the case.
Wow.
You would think that, but it isn't, because at any point, if any of those old dudes, you know, that if their major storyline is the storyline, that's it. And then it almost seems like the belt is unimportant, which is a problem that a lot of people have, and that's still a problem that happens to this day with wrestling, where it's like, well, aren't we supposed to be battling over these championships? Like, why is this about whose husband caught who in the shower? I don't understand. Shouldn't this be about the championship?
I might be equally interested in both of those things. It's kind of interesting.
You know, any story can be told well.
Yeah.
It just depends on if it is.
Yeah.
Freddie Prinze Jr. did some great writing. I don't remember if he did anything specifically like that, but he did. Him and Patrice O'Neal.
Jr.
Yeah, him and Patrice
O'Neal
were writing for wrestling at the same time.
So Freddie Prinze Jr. Well, I get
She's all that.
Yeah.
Buffy's husband.
We have a young demographic, pretty young demographic. But yes. So like movies like that. He also came from kind of like a Hollywood royalty family, I guess, because his dad was a comedian. And then who was the other person that you named?
Patrice O'Neal.
Patrice O'Neal. And Patrice O'Neal recently passed away. Well, at least in my head, it was
feels
like
recent,
a couple
but it's
years.
probably like 5 to 7 years ago, something like that.
From I think either diabetes or something like that, or heart
some kind of failure. Something.
But was a stand-up comedian. Don't agree with everything that he said. Definitely pretty blunt, brash guy.
Yeah.
But
said some wild things.
Said some wild things, but a highly respected stand-up comedian. I think it'd be like if Kevin Hart and people like that.
Yeah, it'd be like if you found out that someone like a Doug Stanhope was writing wrestling at one point.
Yeah. If Doug Stanhope was just something that you totally would not even. I would not have thought that. That's crazy. So when you say that they wrote, did they write jokes?
No, they would write storylines, and so there was a point. There was a point where it used to be that the bookers would book the matches. This person fights this person wins, so that we can get this match. And then there was a guy that was brought in named Vince Russo, who became the first wrestling writer. And unlike with bookers, who usually had some kind of wrestling experience, he was never a wrestler. He just loved wrestling, and so his job became to craft storylines. He would write dialogue for people if they needed. He would write backstage segments. All of these other things. Aside from just two people like, I'll tell you something, Mean Gene, I'm going to hit that dude in the face. And the other dude like, I'm going to hit him in the face harder. Now it suddenly became these long-winded monologues and things happening in the back.
So right around... So what time period was this? Was this like the 90s with Patrice O'Neal and Freddie Prinze Jr.?
I would have to look that up, but I believe that was in the early to mid 2000s.
Oh my gosh, that is so
And I believe
wild.
both of those men wrote for Eddie Guerrero.
That's so nuts. Okay, that's very interesting. This guy had connections with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Patrice O'Neal. Those are two things that are very important those are very important criteria for the Hall of Fame.
See?
So now Eddie Guerrero, I might be jumping ahead, but he's no longer with us. He passed away a little while ago. A long while ago.
Yeah, he so I believe it's been, if it hasn't been, or it's probably around 11 or 12 years that he passed away, something like that. So he did battle substance abuse, as does happen with wrestlers. A big reason for that is just wrestling is really hard on your body. Imagine being a football player with no off season.
Right.
So wrestling is incredibly hard on your body, and taking the painkillers so you can do the job. They're also all independent contractors. So you do the job and get paid that night, or you just don't get paid. They do not have health care. Like, it's a whole thing. They pay for their own travel. Obviously, like, they can write it off, but essentially they're all freelancers.
Yeah, that's rough.
Really rough. But he had, by the time he passed away from heart failure, he had conquered those demons. He'd become a born-again Christian. He was repairing all of the relationships in his family, and he'd always been a good guy who made mistakes, and he became a really good guy, making like no mistakes by the time he'd passed away.
God, That's always how it works.
It's tragic. And there is, so there's a wrestler, one of my favorite wrestlers, named Sasha Banks, who's one of the four horsewomen, as they're called. It's her, Bailey, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch. And they all came up together through the NXT kind of training system that they have now, which teaches them both how to wrestle the WWE style, as well as how to be able to talk on the microphone, craft characters, yada, yada. She was a huge fan of Eddie Guerrero growing up, like as a little girl. She's going to go see, and I believe this was one of the first wrestling shows she was actually going to get to go see. She's also Snoop Dogg's cousin, just
nice.
Weirdly. So this is one of the first wrestling shows I believe she was able to go see, and she had spent so much time making this Eddie Guerrero sign. And so she gets there with her little sign, and some adult, because adults are the worst, is like, oh, that's terrible. Why would, like, you know, whatever, like you didn't. And Eddie had just passed away, like I believe the night before, and she hadn't heard about it and just cried her little eyes out. But now he inspired her so much that when she began crafting her heel character, she does these tributes to him in the ring. She'll wear, you know, gear that's inspired by gear that he's worn, with like the kick pads or any of that. And she's well regarded as one of the best wrestlers in the world. Her and Bailey, I believe it was 2015 or 2016, had what is known to be, that was the match of the year when they did NXT TakeOver in Brooklyn. And so she does, like she'll do that where the ref is distracted or has his back turned, she'll throw the belt or she'll throw something at someone else, play dead, and do these little Eddie tributes.
Oh, wow.
Because it's something that's really important to her. And almost any modern wrestler will tell you that Eddie Guerrero and his work was a huge influence on their career and the kind of wrestling that they do.
Wow. My goodness. That's just fantastic. So heartwarming.
And so you can also add in connection to Snoop Dogg's cousin, if you want to throw that in.
Yeah, the cousin specifically. You have to have a connection with one of Snoop Dogg's cousins.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg cuz.
Oh man, that's so great. That's amazing.
Yeah, and he did wind up ultimately in WrestleMania 20 during a tear-jerking moment versus Kurt Angle. He did win the WWE championship. Now that was during a time when sometimes they do these brand splits because they have these two TV shows that play during weeknights, and sometimes the same storyline will be going for both, and sometimes one will have their own storylines and championships and the other will have their own storylines and championships. So at this point, Raw and SmackDown were separate.
Okay.
And this is where, unfortunately, when I say you can't really untie him from Chris Benoit, redacted. So he wins, and this is a huge moment because he is this wrestler. He is the wrestler's wrestler. Everyone loves him. Again, people are still being inspired by what he did to this day. Streamers come down from the ceiling, and he's holding this championship, and he's crying. Chris Benoit, who was his best friend, and many theorize that part of the reason why Chris Benoit completely like lost it and was not okay and did the horrible things he did was because it happened after Eddie's death. He was just not able to deal with Eddie's death.
I remember. Yeah, I knew who Chris Benoit was before, like the terrible demise. I was familiar with Chris Benoit. I was not familiar with Eddie Guerrero, as I previously stated.
Right.
But I just remember thinking, what would make somebody do that if you don't know? The loss
of his best friend of like 20 years or something like that.
Wow.
Is what was theorized. And I'm sorry, continue. Tell them.
Well, yeah.
Tell him that sad, terrible thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know, Chris Benoit, he murdered his family basically, and then
his
himself.
Wife and his son, and then himself.
Yeah.
When he was, and it became this huge thing. They have later, because there's a guy named Chris Nowinski who studies the effects of concussions on the brain. He went to Harvard and became a wrestler, and now he is one of the leading people pushing concussion research for athletes. He got permission, had the body exhumed. And they studied like the brain, and he had the brain of like an 80-year-old with dementia. So I'm sure that, I mean, that also plays a huge part, but also at the same time, don't kill your wife and kid. Don't do that. Right. But part of the breakdown is because of Eddie's death. Yeah. And so during that moment at WrestleMania 20, Chris Benoit, another great wrestler,
right,
just separating the act from the, in the ring, he was a fantastic wrestler.
Yes.
and at the time considered to be another underdog, he had also won the championship for, I don't remember if it was Raw or SmackDown, which one those were. He had also won the major championship for his TV show. So he runs in the ring, and they're both in the ring crying and celebrating with each other. And that's just one of those indelible moments of, which is forever tainted now, obviously.
Right.
But it's one of those moments of a more, you won't get this, but people who watch wrestling or people who like Total Divas or Total Totes Bells will get this. Daniel Bryan had a moment where he was such an underdog because he was so talented both in the ring and outside of the, and also on the mic, but he had the same problem that an Eddie Guerrero had, which was he doesn't look like what the powers that be considered to be what a champion looks like. They're not these like big brolic dudes. They're smaller guys.
Right.
And a lot of times in wrestling, especially in WWE, they like these big jacked dudes, not necessarily like the smaller, quicker, more technically apt guys. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how good you are if you're like real big. And so he also had a similar kind of Cinderella story where he was the underdog who wound up, taking it and making something huge out of it. And so that's, if Eddie Guerrero was, and also at the time, pushing minorities just in American wrestling, period, was not something that was happening a whole lot. Except for The Rock, which The Rock's got like that Vin Diesel thing going on where a lot of people don't even acknowledge that he's black.
That's what surprises me so much about it wasn't the Nation of Islam, but the
Nation of Domination.
Yeah, right.
People have to be reminded of that because that was like the first and last time WWE really like, they'll admit like, oh yeah, his dad was Rocky Johnson and he's like the Samoan whatever, but like, he's riched his way into whiteness.
Right.
Where it's just not, he's just Dwayne.
Yeah.
He's not a race. He's The Rock.
Yeah, like Will Smith or something like that.
Yeah, like a Will Smith. And so, it is theorized that had Eddie Guerrero not been Latino when he was Latino, had he been a bigger dude, that he may have gotten more. And he did, he did win championships. He was in the Hall of Fame. He is widely regarded as one of the best in the business ever. I believe that like WWE.com did a poll which named him the 11th best wrestler ever in wrestling history or something like that. Wow. And he was amazing, and he was an innovator of the sport.
Yeah.
Who I still had more time left in him, still had more years left in him. But had he been like a big brolic dude, maybe he would have been able to have that crossover success where the average person does know who he is, like a Stone Cold or a John Cena or The Rock. I believe he could have.
Okay. Well, I've heard about enough. I'm ready to make a ruling on this right now based on what I've heard. And I will say that Eddie Guerrero is in Raph's Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Had to. How could? Whoa! Did you hear that? Did you hear
that? Sorry, he does the shimmy when he wins.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have to do the Eddie shimmy.
Oh, fantastic. This was great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, thanks so much for being here.
I mean, not eulogize, but celebrate the career of someone who everyone should get to know.
Yes, exactly. Do you have, we plugged your Twitter.
Yes.
And the podcast.
Yes.
Anything else you want to plug or anything like that?
Sure. You can find me on Screen Junkies talking about movies. I'm on there on Wednesdays, not Wednesdays. I'm on there on Thursdays, so you can find me on Screen Junkies. You can also find me, I have a Patreon where I love bad movies and wrestling. If you like one or both of those things, we will have these live Discord chats where like we'll all watch a movie together or something that's readily available on your Netflixes or your Hulus, and we'll kind of talk about it. So, just making a lot of fun. Like for Christmas, we did Christmas Prince 2, not Christmas Prince 1, which I have not seen and will not see. But so we had a really good time kind of chatting through that. Yeah, so come find us over there. My prices are cheap because I know what I'm worth.
Fantastic. Do it. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next time. Hi, I'm Raphael, and if you like that video, subscribe to Dropout, where you can chat with the cast in the exclusive Dropout Discord. And that is a chest thang promise, which is almost as good as a real promise.